Zrondani. Welcome back to Intrepid Books. In today's video, we are going to be discussing some more lore about the elemental multiverse. And more specifically, we are going to be talking about that of the elemental beasts. And yes, I think I actually might have promised I would be talking about the humans or something before. But yeah, actually, the elemental beasts do need to actually be discussed before we actually start going into the races, as well as the different planets. So, let's actually begin. So, first off, what are the elemental beasts? Obviously, if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that Voltage is one. You know that there's also the fact that in Sting's Adventures, Sting gets multiple. Fierce is one. Ultima is one. So on and so forth. There's a lot of elemental beasts. But what you may not know is what exactly are they? Well, the fact is that elemental beasts are very powerful elementals created by the original nine as their first attempt to make assistance to create the entire elemental multiverse. But they gave them way too much power that would be considered dangerous if anyone but the nine elementals had. And it's comparable very easily to to the same power level as the nine major elementals. But most people don't actually know the percentages, so that's why we're not going to be going over that. Instead, we're going to be using the original nine elemental beasts as the reference, and we'll talk about that as we go into the different elementals or the different elemental beasts. But what exactly can you do with an elemental beast? Well, the first thing that you can do is you can summon them as a normal beast. This will be in this is their basic bestial form, the thing that most people know them as. Usually these are really big versions of these specific beasts. So, for example, Voltage, even though he is a wolf, he is actually the size of a freaking horse and has been ridden by multiple Chosais over the few thousand years that he's been around. And yeah, the same goes for a lot of these other creatures as well. Obviously, they can shrink down to the size of what they would look like if they were an average sized animal, but most of the time they're actually huge. Even the werewolf is about the size of a giant in certain degrees, but small giants, not like the biggest types of giants. Let's not get into how big giants can get yet. But that is their basic form. But they also have their humanoid form, which is summoned by saying Zanakul Bakuna Aya, which basically means true form, help me. And by doing that, it means that they will look more humanoid and will still be able to assist, but they're not. Most of that time, they're actually used as just as assistants. Basically, they talk to you and all this stuff. But most of the time, people are going to use Bakuna Aya, which will summon them in their bestial form, which, again, they can actually shrink or go to their full size. But then there are two other types of summons. First, there is Yanar Aya, which basically means protect me, and it will give the user the armor of that specific beast. A good example is that Yanar is saying Yanar Aya would actually give you a unicorn-like armor. If you've seen Willow, then think of the armor that what's his name actually wore. I have not watched that movie in so long. Holy crap! But basically, think of that armor as your as a good example of what it looks like. We're not going to go over each and every single one of them, but yeah. And then there is a Bomb Aya, which allows you to create a weapon specifically for that specific beast. Again, sometimes it's a sword, sometimes it's a mace, sometimes it's an axe, so on and so forth. There's lots of different weapons. Probably the most well-known one is that of the Knives of Voltage, but we're not going to get into that right now. Also, how do you actually activate these? First off, there is the object. A few of them have rings, but each one I will be going over each of the different objects that they have. Usually, you need to have that object in order to activate the summon, or any of the other options. And if it's the actual summon, you're only going to be able to do it for a certain amount of time, unless it's a special case, and we're not going to get into all of those right now. But basically, you can only, depending on your power level, you can only summon a beast for a certain amount of time. Something to keep in mind is that even the weakest of the elemental beasts cannot be summoned by a Homan. If they are ever summoned by a Homan, it will only last for 10 seconds, at which point the Homan will explode. And yeah, that's why they are kept very far away from Homans. Other races obviously do get them, but yeah. But the most extreme is that if you Sting Danger Girl on the second is actually able to summon each of the beasts basically indefinitely. But if he were to summon every single one of the elemental beasts, he would only be able to summon them for 10 seconds, at which point he would get so exhausted that he would basically faint. The only way that he can do this in the book is to actually use every single object, including the King's Rings, and we'll talk about those in a future video. But yeah, that is the only way that Sting Danger Goron is ever able to command all of the elemental beasts, and he's the most powerful being in all of the elemental multiverse. So yeah. But that's the basic thing. Otherwise, you can basically summon the weapons or summon the armor for basically indefinite amount of time, but switching between them or activating multiple of them, yes, they can drain you very fast, and it basically just makes you faint. Even Homans are able to summon these armors and weapons. It's just a time-based thing, and it will eventually drain them of their power, and they will faint. With Homans, I'll just give that example. They can only summon a single armor or a single weapon for about 10 minutes. At that point, they lose their energy and they faint. Others are able to go basically indefinitely. So we're not going to get into all of that right now. But anyways, let's actually start talking about the different elemental beasts. So, as I mentioned, there were originally 9 elemental beasts that were so powerful that they had to be contained quickly. These are what we are going to be calling the 100% elemental beast. These 9 elementals were immediately changed by God into the elemental beasts and put into specific objects so that they would be contained within their power. These specific guys are Yanar, the Unicorn of Light, which is held within the shield, Fierce, the Phoenix, the Fire Phoenix, held within the shoulder plate / the staff, because that was originally what his item looked like, except that when the Phoenix were no longer able to contain him, it was changed into a shoulder pad to eventually be held by one of the nerdy birdies. So yeah. Next up is Voltage. I honestly don't know what to actually call him, but he's a wolf, and he is the electric wolf, and he is held within a necklace. There is a Minotaur, which currently does not have a name, but that's mostly because of the fact that his name got changed so many times over the years that he's basically forgotten it, and he does get one eventually, but it's not important right now. But the Minotaur of Earth, which is in an earring. Shadow, the werewolf, which is held within a belt, and he is obviously dark. Zinc, the fairy, which is air, which is actually bigger than a normal fairy. I will actually briefly say this. Most fairies are only about that big, so a little bit bigger than my eye. Zinc is about the size of my face. Or at least as tall as my face. So, yeah, keep that in mind for if you are wondering about fairies, and we will be talking about fairies eventually. Next up is Kalan, the water kraken, held within a bracelet. I don't think I actually mentioned, but Zinc is held within a ring. So, yeah. Next up is Abam the Yeti, which is the ice, and he is held within a glove. Kolon, the killer plant, is the obviously nature, and he is held within a bracer. And those are the 9 single elemental beasts. These guys are, like I said, these are 100% elemental. There's no divergence. These guys are just so powerful that they can even go head to toe with some of their later descent or later children and so on. They are obviously powerful, but we're not going to get into all of them right now. At 90%, though, they thought that they could actually make, again, some slightly weaker ones. So they made 9 more elementals into an elemental beast. But they actually did it slightly wrong because they actually created both a 90% version of each of these, and then they made an 80% guy. Both of these guys are actually held within the same object, the Ring of 9, which holds all 18 of these elementals within it. These elementals are so powerful. They are 9 element elemental beasts. And like I said, they are powerful. They are really powerful. So powerful, in fact, that they are considered extremely dangerous. The 90% is that of Beastmaster, which is held behind the lock of you cannot summon him without summoning every single other elemental beast first. Which, yeah, that's a challenge. Like I said, the only person who's even able to do that is that of Sting, and he doesn't even do that for many years. Beastmaster only ever comes into the story very late into the story and is only summoned once in all of my books. So, yeah, I don't even know if I should actually mention him, so keep that in mind. Next up is 9. Again, these guys are actually contained within the Beast Ring, which is one of the 3 rings held by the different kings of the elemental multiverse. This one is held by that of Sting Danger Girl on the first, and then later Sting Danger Girl on the second. These 2 beasts are very powerful, and the ring can actually summon any elemental beast it wants, so long as the person knows the symbol. 9 can only be summoned if every single element of an elemental beast has actually been used by the specific owner. At least in the main Sting's Adventures story. It is later able to be used again by Sting's grandson, without him ever being able to summon all of the other elemental beasts. But we're not talking about that right now. They thought, oh, okay, we're gonna calm down a bit, we got this, let's make another one, and they made one at 70%. These guys were again another 9 elemental beast. 9 elements elemental beast, but unlike the rest of the beasts, this one could actually be summoned from each of the different stones individually. But summoned with all of the stones would actually become so powerful that it was considered very dangerous, but it was actually going to be used multiple times throughout the universe wars. And this is Primal the Dragon, which is held within the chestplate of the dragon. And yeah, like I said, very powerful. One of the most powerful elemental beasts who's gotten into multiple people's hands. This one has fought over quite a lot, so yeah, keep that in mind. So next up is, of course, the dual element elemental beasts. They thought, okay, we've got this under control, I think we've got this now. And they screwed up again. Making 18 elementals that were at 60% of the frickin' power level of the original 9. And yes, I said that there were 18 of these guys, which were split into groups of 2, and each of these beasts is actually very, very important to Sting later down the line. So first off is the Light and Dark Boots, which holds a genie named Aladdin. And yes, this is the original origins of Aladdin in the Elemental Multiverse. So yeah. Doesn't work like a normal genie, doesn't grant wishes and all that jazz. He's just very powerful. Next up is Lk, which is death. He is the Sphinx of earth and air, and is held within another glove. The glove has the stones on either side of the hand, so yeah, that's something interesting to say. Next up is the Centaur, which again, like the Minotaur, was transferred so many times that he forgot his name over the years and just became known as the Centaur. He does eventually get a final name and sticks with it, but we're not getting into that right now. But he is the earth and nature, and he is also held within an earring. Next up is Ultima, the sea serpent, which uses water and fire and is held within a sword. This is used in Sting's Adventures, just so you guys are aware. Next up is Nessie, yes, the Loch Ness Monster, which is water and ice and is a shoulder pad. Again, one stone on either side of the shoulder. Next up is the Jackalope, again transferred so many times until it was eventually lost and found again, which holds both nature and fire, and that one is held within the bracer. The other three are actually very special, as these guys were not actually ever used for the most part. These guys were later created by Sting, Danger Garon II, as well as the rest of his alternates, to create elemental beasts that were extremely powerful in order to assist. They did find the original stones, but basically what happened is that when these six elementals were created, their stones were taken by Delorio and sent forward in time so that they would eventually be found by Sting, as well as his alternates. So, and that's how they would eventually come into being. These guys are all put into shin guards, which or the first two are, and that is Yin and Yang, the Black Panther and the White Lion, which obviously both of which use electricity and are obviously light and darkness as their others. And if you guys don't know which ones they are, then yeah. You're gonna have to look that up yourself. Next up is Serenity, the Ice Phoenix. This was created later, using both the alternate of ice and the alternate of air working together with Sting to create a back piece that would change into wings so that he could actually fly. Specifically, this was used in the Fire universe and really helped out a lot during that time. So I'm not going to get into all of that, but yeah. Next up are the 50%. Like I said, these elementals were extremely powerful. When they came in together, they would create 150% power levels. And as such, oh boy, these three are insane. These three elemental beasts are considered by far to be the most powerful and are actually kept under lock and key in 3 different worlds in order to keep them completely safe. First off is Protector, the Griffin of light, darkness, and electricity, held within the helmet, like I said. 1 gem here, 1 gem here, and 1 gem on the forehead. This is kept on Lornon in a very secure chamber at the bottom of the castle of Lornon. So yeah. Very dangerous, probably the most dangerous of all of the beasts. Next up is Destruction, the Chimera of fire, ice, and water, and that is held within a ring. This one basically goes between the different planets for that, for fire, water, and ice. So goes between Fornon, Hornon, and Sornon. So yeah, that's where that thing is, and it's transferred in multiple different cases so that there's multiple different routes that they take, and it takes a different route every single time so that no one ever finds it. And yeah, they protect it well, to say the least. And finally, there is Chaos, the manticore of Earth, Nature, and Air, which is held within the last bracelet. This guy is extremely dangerous, like I said, but he is kept very secure on Earth, actually. He was actually buried very deep within the Earth's core, and no one can really get to him. Eventually, Kolon and Kalon actually work together with Sting to eventually get it out, but that's as far as that is basically all you need to know. This is the only one that is securely kept. Nessie and I believe Kolon, let me actually make sure that it's Kolon. No, Kalon are also kept on Earth in safekeeping of Earth, and we're not going to get into who she is right now, but yes, Earth keeps those three safe. So, yeah. Like I said, they are extremely dangerous. There's a Bakunai, and it's all complicated, and we're not going to get into all of that stuff in today's video. But the question then is, what happened to the rest of the way down? Well, these beasts, there were still a lot of trial and error to eventually get it down to 1% of an elemental beast is what you see as the majority of the elementals, except for those that are actually holding the planets together. These ones are just so minor that they don't even have souls anymore at that level. 1% is actually the ones that helped create the planets and would eventually die off and become the even smaller ones that are basically just part of the planets and holding them together. But basically, all of the way up to the 50 mark are actually a lot of just random elemental that just never got any chance to shine. And were actually they were actually infused into the hearts of humans, and we will be talking about that later. But yeah, that's actually something that's kind of interesting, to say the least, and we'll talk about that in the future, like I said. But then you might be asking, what about the anti-beasts? Now you might be wondering, what the heck am I even talking about? But anti-beasts are actually a very specific group of elemental beasts that are created by splitting an elemental beast from their darkness and light. There's a lot of complicated information that goes into it, but the important thing to note here is that the only ones that can actually have elemental beasts are the single elemental beasts, as not including that of Shadow. Each of these beasts none of these beasts would actually be created except for that of the one that is connected to Voltage, which is Quake the Tiger, which again is very similar to the same size as him as Voltage, but that is held by Alero Chasai, aka Anti-Ninja, and anti-elemental beasts are extremely dangerous, and I don't want to get into all of their details, but basically they are taking the single elemental beasts and going with the opposite powers completely. While most elemental beasts will release tons of energy of their specific element, anti-elemental beasts actually absorb the elements and actually send them back into their user. And it's dangerous. They cause a lot of destruction. If they were ever to be created. The only one, like I said, that was ever created was Quake, the Tiger of Earth, which, thank goodness, because that was extremely dangerous. And we will be talking more about that when we actually talk about Alero and Electri, but that is going to be a whole series unto itself, so we're not going to be talking about that right now. But yeah, that is that whole chaos. So yeah. Anyways, guys, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video about the elemental beasts, and hopefully you are excited to learn more about the elemental multiverse. Hopefully, like I said, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and ring that notification bell. And if you want to support the channel even more, then make sure to head down to the description and check out all of our links down there, including our other channels, as well as our social medias, and ways that you can support us financially, including our Patreon, our merch store, and of course the book. And a big thank you to our current patron Sheeny, and of course, if you have any thoughts or theories or whatever, leave them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video. But on!